I hope that you all are having a good day. Um, and I guess I just wanted to take a second to talk about the full moon eclipse that is coming up in Taurus and some of the implications for that, some of the things that we could see next year and in the coming years with Uranus and Taurus. Um, so yeah, I just wanted to maybe look at the different decans of Taurus. So if you were to take a sign that comprises of 30 degrees and you were to cut that 30-degree sign into 3 different parts, and if you were to give each of those 10 degrees a subruler, this is the study of decans in astrology. So every 10 degrees of the zodiac also has a subruler. So for example, Taurus is the sign that we're going to be using in this video to kind of explain how this can work, how we can observe it. But so Taurus is ruled by Venus. So the 30 degrees of Taurus are ruled by Venus, which means that there is a sensuality, a receptiveness to the sign of Taurus. It's very like earthy Venus, like sensual pleasures and the taste of chocolate as it melts on your mouth, the sensation that you get when someone touches you, that's all very like Taurus senses. And also Venus has a component to do with money. Venus is love, pleasure, money, things that you have to receive, right? So Taurus has to do with also money, material possessions, things that you have in your name right now, that kind of thing, right? So in the subrulers, though, of the sign of Taurus, there's the Venus ruled decan, or the first 10 degrees. There's the Mercury ruled decan, the second 10 degrees. And then there's the Saturn ruled decan, the third 10 degrees of the sign of Taurus, 30 degrees in all, right? So, so this full moon lunar eclipse, so just to kind of break down that language, the full moon is where the sun and the sky opposes the moon, and it can illuminate things. It's like you feel for that moment in time the opposition, that on each side of an opposition, maybe signs are dealing with the same thing in different ways. So, so the full moon lunar eclipse is going to be in Taurus, which means that the sun is going to be in Scorpio. This is a releasing eclipse. So eclipses are kind of where shit just kind of happens out beyond our control. We all have in our lives, things that maybe we wouldn't have the strength to release, or, things that we wouldn't have the courage to maybe go approach, right? And I think that the eclipses just kind of bring things in and they take things out, and so I think that this full moon lunar eclipse is going to be some kind of releasing point. This lunar eclipse, though, is happening at the 27th degree of Taurus. This is on November 19th. And this is in the Saturn decan. So I'm going to jump to Uranus now. Uranus has been in Taurus like full time, like fully since, oh no, I am the glitch. Be the glitch that you want to see. Okay, so so Taurus is a sign that has to do with money, with resources, that kind of thing, right? So when Uranus comes into Taurus, which is the disruptor, the planet of ups and downs, changes, instability, the unexpected, right? Like very hard to predict exactly what happens with Uranus from my perspective, though. Uranus does not like to be in Taurus. Uranus is actually in what's called its fall in Taurus. The reason for this is that Uranus really likes change, which is why it loves to be in the sign of Scorpio, for example. It loves to like shed layers and, like to evolve, right? But in Taurus, there's a lot of resistance to change. There's a lot of holding on to old ways, and a lot of like grasping. So from my perspective anyway, just as a completely abnormal person, the grasping onto normal, you know, old normal, new normal, whatever, that looks like a very Uranus and Taurus type of thing to me. So Uranus has transited the first decan um, of Taurus, sorry, and is moving through right now the second decan of Taurus. I don't know, I don't think it comes into the third decan of Taurus until next year or the year after. The third decan is where is Saturn ruled. And so I think that what happens when Uranus comes into that third decan, that Saturn ruled, I think that we could see a lot of like new limitations, restrictions. I think that if you want to like look at history, this is where we would start to see things like breadlines, right? And I know that this is like an unpopular topic, and that maybe spiritual people are just better off like preaching the prosperity gospel and like championing the opposite of lack, which I think is a good thing to do. I mean, we all have like poverty vows that we made in other lifetimes, and we all have like an understanding of, we all have work to do on our own money beliefs and on our own what is actually abundance to us. Like, can we look at like a bowl of fruit and say that that's like of a similar or same value than like this fiat currency? Or like are we looking at like digital real estate and digital worlds as valuable? Like, what's our gauge? What are our values? And like, I think that I've been personally kind of watching myself like almost act as an ancestor and kind of like just storing away a little. Like, okay, if I eat a cucumber now, I'm more likely to save the seeds, and so that I can maybe plant some cucumbers and have some organic cucumbers in the spring next year, summer. So this is the way that I'm thinking. And this is kind of like, it's kind of just like, yeah, storing away like different types of resources. And this is kind of like what I was talking about at the beginning of the year, when I made the beginning of the 2021 sort of video. I was saying like, it's good to diversify your resources, because we really don't know until Uranus, in my opinion, is in Gemini, which is a long ways off, like what the actual monetary system is going to be. Like, for all we know, it could be a series of like pilot programs that get stopped and started and stopped and started and started and stopped, and then almost like a series of trial runs before we get like what we actually get. I don't know very much about the monetary system. I don't know very much about money at all, but I do know about astrology. And so this full moon lunar eclipse has my eyes on it for what happens in the land of monetary resources. I don't think that people necessarily realize like just how vast the wealth transfer aspect of this Sharona is. And so I just wanted to come, talk about that and bring light to that, and kind of normalize like beginning to talk about like, okay, well, what are we going to do? Just because I don't know. I mean, and I think everybody has a space in this, and like everybody has a role. So even if your role isn't like looking at some of these trends, that's okay. Maybe your role is to inspire people in a positive direction. But I don't know. I just kind of like, at this point, I'm kind of in the like, if you see something, say something kind of mindset. And this full moon lunar eclipse has me a little bit on edge as far as like world resources. I know that the UN climate summit was not too long ago, and there were some pretty interesting things that were discussed there. So I think that we could see as well, with the nodes changing next year, the North Node is moving into Taurus and the South Node is moving into Scorpio. So what that means is it's going to be really positive to have things and to have things like land, material resources. So if you're like stressed and concerned about money or whatever, like in this time, I think silver, things like that, silver, as much as I don't want to like, bang this drum, I think guns and ammo, like, that's okay to have guns and ammo right now, you know what I mean? Like, that's all right. Protect yourself, like, don't buy into like the idea that like protecting yourself and your family somehow makes you, because that's just lies. And I would say also, seeds and things to add to soil to make the soil richer. And I think also, like, just to be honest, like ways of growing food indoors, ways of alternate ways of, providing electricity, because Uranus in Taurus is very like seismic and can cause sometimes too like earth changes. And, so I think that like that, we could see that kind of activity with the North Node coming up into a conjunction next year with Uranus. I think next year is going to be a pretty interesting year for earth changes, tsunamis, just, so I think that like we'll find a lot of like our inner resilience with the North Node in Taurus. And I actually think that like for those who vie for nature, like the natural life upon this fucking earth, and for those who like vie for the universe and the natural forces of the universe, I think that this is one of those things where like nature will look after you. That could mean something different than what I actually feel like it means now, but this is just like my main like download about the North Node in Taurus. The South Node in Scorpio is going to have a lot of people like, I mean, well, that's death, first of all, frankly, a lot of death, and that's death of ideas, death of, countries, potentially, death of like people. And I'm not in charge of this, but that's kind of one of the things that I think. And I also think that we could see like some kind of like scapegoating. So what I mean by that is like, okay, Jeffrey Epstein is a perfect example of a scapegoat, because he took the fall for a whole lot of people's crimes, basically, and then allegedly was, taken care of, right? And then nothing ever happened, nothing ever like moved along. And so I think with some of the events of the last few years, we could see like some like people being blamed for certain things, but then like the overarching sort of like UN, Agenda 2030, like that kind of presses on anyway. So I think that we could start to really hear the changing climate conversation. I think that conditions are being made here to feel like inhospitable. And I think that that connects to the metaverse. And I think that, that's one way, there's there's several ways that I think we could play this. But I think that, the conversation of, this type of passporting system that's going into places in, like regions of North America and Europe and in Australia and these types of things, like I think that that's kind of like a cracked door into this next sort of like level of, surveillance, monitoring, or you don't know. Like, so I think that we'll have some choices to make of like, how are we going to handle this? Is it going to be optional? Are we going to be able to opt out? And what does that look like? How, like, where is our opt out window? Um, you know, I I think that yeah, so I'm like trying to come up with words for it. And I think that that based on the choices, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, that people have made, it puts us in a pretty, you know, pretty tight squeeze. I think that we are in a like troubled place emotionally as a collective, and so I think that that will be really like exacerbated with the South Node in Scorpio. There's like, yeah, just a lot of like uprising I sense from these nodes changing. A lot of people too trying to make like homesteading communities and networks, like organic networks, a reality, like on the fly. I feel like people are like going to have to be adaptable as fuck and like really clear on like what their lines are. And there's also this like really mutable, changeable energy as we move through this like last degree of the North Node in Gemini and the South Node in Sag. I think that, the backdrop is going to change a little bit and it's going to become a little bit more fixed. So some of these like travel restrictions or whatever, you know, oh, it's such a fun time talking about this. It really is. Because like you can do your best to shed light on like the various things that have been documented and like very much like have been a long-standing thing. You can shed light on that and then people kind of like demonize you for that. So I'm not saying anything that hasn't already been said. I'm just the messenger. And, I think that with the North Node in Taurus and the South Node in Scorpio, it's like, what fills us up? What makes us happy? What gives us life? Like we have, I think, these choices of like, are we going to choose just like comfort of a digital prison cell? Or are we going to choose to say, fuck you, make me, like, so these are some thoughts that I have, and they're very messy. It's the morning here, so I just wanted to get some of that out, and not to scare anybody, but I do think that, the writing is kind of on the wall. So I don't know. Love you guys. Take care.